in the heart of the northern wilderness, where the mountains meet the sky and the forest whispers ancient secrets, a young grizzly bear cub lay struggling to survive. The air was thick with the scent of pine, and the faint sound of a stream gurgled in the distance. But the cub, lost and injured, had no energy left to explore. Alone in a small clearing, it had crawled as far as its weary body could take it, hoping for a miracle that never seemed to come. This wasn't just any ordinary day in the wild. The cub had been separated from its mother during a fierce autumn storm. The cold winds had blown fiercely, and the forest had swallowed them whole. What had started as an adventure, just a simple walk in the woods, had turned into a battle for survival. And now here it was, lying alone in the quiet, struggling to hold on to life. The cub's fur, once thick and glossy, was now matted with dirt and blood. It had been a long, hard journey, and the cub's small body could no longer carry it. Each shallow breath it took seemed to be a reminder of just how much life it had left in this vast, unforgiving wilderness. Would it make it through the night? Or would the forest claim yet another helpless creature? The cub's eyes fluttered open, its vision blurry, but it could see the dark outline of the trees surrounding it. It could hear the rustle of leaves, the distant call of an eagle, but nothing could comfort it now. There were no signs of its mother, no other bears in sight, just the vast emptiness of the wild. The cub's heart pounded in its chest, unsure whether it was fear or desperation that drove its frantic pulse. Then, through the stillness, came a rustling sound from the underbrush. The cub's ears perked up, its tiny body tensing, unsure if it was a predator or perhaps, just perhaps, a sign of hope. It didn't have the strength to move, but its eyes darted toward the noise, struggling to stay alert. Out of the shadows of the trees, a figure emerged. The cub's heart skipped a beat, its instinct to flee kicking in. But instead of a terrifying predator, what appeared was an ancient wolf, its coat streaked with shades of gray, its eyes glowing with quiet wisdom. This was no ordinary wolf. It was older than most, with a look in its eyes that seemed to speak of countless seasons spent surviving the harshest of winters. The wolf's gaze softened as it took in the sight of the injured cub. It didn't approach quickly, nor did it make any threatening moves. Instead, it simply stood still, observing, as if considering something deeper than just the instinct to hunt. The cub, for all its fear, could feel something different in the air now. The wolf didn't seem like a predator, but rather a guardian, perhaps a creature that understood the wild in ways the cub never could. As the cub lay there, its breath shallow and its body trembling, it couldn't help but wonder, could this be the miracle it had been waiting for? Was this wolf a sign of hope, or would it be another danger to face in an already unforgiving world? What happened next would leave both the cub and the wilderness forever changed. The actions of this unlikely ally, this old wolf, would offer a lesson in survival, compassion, and the surprising bonds that can form in the most unexpected of moments. As the cub lay trembling in the clearing, its body bruised and beaten, a faint hope stirred within it, a hope that perhaps the wilderness wasn't as unforgiving as it seemed. It had heard stories from other animals, stories whispered on the wind about creatures who watched over the forest, creatures whose hearts were as old as the mountains themselves. Now it seemed the cub might be face to face with one of those legends. The wolf that had emerged from the shadows stood motionless, its amber eyes fixed on the grizzly cub. Despite its age, the wolf's stance was one of undeniable authority, as though it had lived through centuries of storms, hunger, and triumph. The wolf's fur, streaked with silver, seemed to shimmer in the fading light of the day. It had seen countless creatures come and go, but there was something about this cub, something that sparked an ancient instinct deep within the wolf's chest. The cub, though still weak, could feel the wolf's presence in the air. There was no immediate danger from this creature, no sense of hostility. The wild instinct that would normally send the cub running instead filled it with a strange sense of calm, as if this wolf was a figure from the very heart of the forest, a guardian of sorts, who understood the delicate balance of life and death. Slowly, the wolf took a step forward, its paws making barely a sound on the forest floor. It moved with a grace that only age could bring, each movement deliberate, purposeful. The wolf's eyes never left the cub's, And in those eyes, the cub saw something it hadn't expected: compassion. It was a quiet, unspoken emotion, but it was there. The cub's body tensed as the wolf drew closer. The air was thick with silence, and the only sound was the soft rustle of leaves in the wind. The cub tried to gather what little strength it had left, its tiny body quivering with both fear and the faintest flicker of curiosity. What was this wolf doing? What did it want with the helpless cub? The wolf stopped a few feet away, its nose twitching as it sniffed the air. There was no sign of aggression, no growl, no flash of teeth. Instead, the wolf's gaze softened, and it lowered its head just a little, as though acknowledging the cub's vulnerability. It was a quiet, respectful gesture, a silent invitation to trust. And, in that moment, the cub felt something unexpected: a sense of safety. The kind of safety it hadn't known since it had been torn away from its mother during the storm. The wolf was not a predator. It wasn't here to harm. The cub's heart pounded a little less fiercely, its trembling subsiding just a bit. The wolf didn't speak, of course. No words were necessary. In the wild, actions spoke louder than any language. And in the wolf's actions, the cub saw something incredible: an offer of help. A simple act of kindness, unbidden and unexpected. The cub's instincts began to shift from fear to something else, something like trust. With slow and measured steps, the wolf began to nudge the cub gently with its snout, guiding it as though encouraging the cub to move. It was a delicate touch, a gesture of reassurance, as if the wolf was telling the cub that it wasn't alone, that it wasn't abandoned in the wilderness to face its fate by itself. The cub's body protested, its limbs weak and heavy, but the touch of the wolf gave it a sense of purpose. With the wolf's guidance, the cub managed to shift slightly, turning its head toward the safety of the forest's edge. The wind was colder now, and the night was drawing near, but the wolf remained close, never pushing too hard, just offering the quiet support the cub desperately needed. It was an act of kindness that the cub couldn't fully understand, but it could feel the warmth of it nonetheless. The wilderness was a harsh, often unforgiving place, where only the strongest survived. But here, in this small clearing, something extraordinary was happening. The cub, once on the brink of death, was being given a chance not by a fellow bear, but by an ancient wolf, a creature of the wild who understood more than anyone the delicate balance of life and death. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the forest floor. The air had cooled, and the first stirrings of evening began to rise from the depths of the wilderness. But the grizzly cub, despite its pain, felt a strange sense of comfort, something it had not known since it was torn from its mother's side. This wasn't just any random encounter. It felt as though the universe itself had intervened, guiding the old wolf to this moment, to this clearing. The wolf, though ancient and slow, had an unspoken power. It stood by the cub, its golden eyes calm yet intent. It wasn't hurrying, nor was it forcing the cub to move faster. The wolf understood something profound. Survival was not just about strength. It was about knowing when to give, when to help, and when to simply stand guard. And now, with the cub in such a fragile state, the wolf had become its protector, its silent guardian. As the wolf nudged the cub again with its nose, the young bear let out a weak sigh, its chest rising and falling with labored breaths. But the touch of the wolf, gentle, persistent, seemed to awaken something deep inside. The cub's muscles, sore from the long struggle to stay alive, began to respond, just a little. It shifted its body, responding to the wolf's guidance, feeling a flicker of life rekindle within it. For the first time in what felt like forever, the cub didn't feel so alone. It was as if the wolf, by simply being present, had bridged a gap between worlds, between predator and prey, between wild beasts with no reason to trust one another. Yet in this moment, neither the wolf nor the cub cared for that divide. It was not about dominance or survival. It was about something far more rare in the wild: connection. As the cub tentatively raised its head, it looked into the wolf's eyes once more. The amber gaze was unwavering, full of understanding. The cub's heart began to slow, its fearful pulse quieting as it realized that this was not a threat. It wasn't food for the wolf. It wasn't prey. The cub wasn't simply being protected, it was being cared for in the most quiet, profound way. The wolf, having waited for the right moment, then moved closer, not to push the cub, but to shield it. With a single movement, the wolf sat down beside the cub, its posture relaxed, its body radiating warmth. It was almost as if the wolf was saying, "I'm here. Rest. You're not alone." The cub, too weak to fight the overwhelming wave of exhaustion, closed its eyes. For the first time since the storm, it allowed itself to rest. Its small form nestled into the soft earth beneath it. The wolf stayed close, its body a protective barrier against the cold and the dangers that lurked in the forest. There was no rush, no urgency. In that moment, all that mattered was the gentle connection that had formed between them. Two creatures, vastly different, yet linked by a shared understanding. The wilderness around them seemed to quiet, as though respecting this fragile bond. The trees, tall and ancient, whispered with the wind, and the stream nearby babbled quietly, as if to lull the cub to sleep. The wolf's presence was like a lullaby, soft and steady, a promise that things might be different, that there might be more to life in the wild than the constant struggle for survival. In that brief, silent moment, something changed for the cub. It was no longer just a solitary, injured bear fighting for life. It had become part of something larger, something greater than itself. And the wolf, with all its ancient wisdom, had shown it the first step toward healing. As the night fell, the two creatures remained together in the clearing, their bond growing deeper with each passing hour. Neither spoke, for there were no words necessary. In the language of the wild, they understood each other perfectly. #wildlife connections, #naturebond, #survival stories. The moon had risen high, casting a silver glow over the forest. The air was crisp, and the stars twinkled like scattered diamonds above the two unlikely companions in the clearing. The grizzly cub, once barely able to move, now lay with its head raised, its amber eyes wide with a flicker of life. It wasn't strong yet, but the quiet presence of the old wolf had made all the difference. With every passing moment, the cub felt its body responding, finding strength where there had only been weakness before. The wolf, ever watchful, had not strayed far. It stayed close, its posture relaxed, its gaze soft yet keen. The wolf's ancient presence seemed to have a way of calming the cub's fears, of reminding it that, even in the harshest of environments, survival wasn't always about physical strength. Sometimes it was about finding a moment of peace, a spark of hope in the most unexpected of places. Slowly, the wolf nudged the cub again, this time with more purpose. It wasn't a nudge of encouragement this time. It was a nudge that urged the cub to move, to take the first step toward its own survival. The wolf's movements were slow, deliberate, but they carried a weight of unspoken understanding. It wasn't forcing the cub to stand, it was offering a lifeline, a chance for the cub to take that crucial step forward. The cub's muscles screamed in protest as it tried to rise. Its limbs were still shaky, its body still weak, but something deep inside it stirred, a sense of resolve, perhaps, or the primal instinct that urged it to keep going. The cub's legs wobbled beneath it as it attempted to stand, but the old wolf remained by its side, a silent guardian who had not left its post. With each small step, the cub found a little more strength, and with each gentle nudge from the wolf, it grew more confident. It was an extraordinary sight. A bear cub, so young and fragile, taking its first steps toward recovery, not because it was stronger, but because of the quiet strength it had been given. Strength that came from an ancient wolf who understood the delicate balance of life and death in the wild. The wolf's touch wasn't just physical. It was a transfer of wisdom, of life itself. It wasn't teaching the cub how to hunt or how to fight. It was teaching the cub how to believe in itself, how to find its footing, even in the face of adversity. The cub took another wobbly step, its tiny claws digging into the earth beneath it. The wolf moved alongside it, offering support without intruding, its eyes steady and filled with quiet encouragement. It didn't need to push or pull. The wolf understood that the cub needed space to grow, time to heal, and above all, patience. As the cub gained a bit more strength, it felt something unexpected, a sense of gratitude. Gratitude for the wolf, yes, but also for the wild itself, for the simple gift of life. The wilderness, though harsh and unforgiving, had also given the cub a chance. And this old wolf, with its silent wisdom, had shown it that survival wasn't just about fighting to stay alive. It was about finding strength in the moments of stillness, in the unexpected acts of kindness, and in the bonds that could form between creatures of different worlds. The cub took another tentative step, its body trembling, but more certain this time. It felt the cool night air on its fur, heard the rustling of the leaves around it, and for the first time in what felt like forever, it felt truly alive. The wolf's presence was like a steady pulse in the heart of the wild, a reminder that even in the harshest of times, there was always a chance to begin again. The cub paused for a moment, looking up at the old wolf. Their eyes met, amber meeting amber, and in that gaze, the cub found not just a protector, but a guide. The wolf had shown it how to stand up, how to move forward, and in doing so, it had given the cub the most important gift of all: hope. The early morning light filtered through the towering pines, casting a soft golden glow over the forest. The wind had begun to pick up, rustling the leaves and sending ripples through the nearby stream. The air was fresh and cool, a sharp contrast to the warmth that the grizzly cub now felt in its chest, a warmth that came not from the sun, but from the quiet strength it had gained over the past few days. The wolf was still with it, of course, always watching, always guiding. But now, something was different. The cub had become more alert, more aware. The weakness that had once overwhelmed its body was slowly ebbing away, replaced by a growing sense of purpose. With each step, the cub was learning more, not just how to walk, but how to survive in the wilderness. The wolf, ever patient, had become more than just a silent guardian. It had become a teacher. It didn't offer instructions in words, but in actions. The way it moved, the way it scanned the forest, the way it listened to the subtle shifts in the wind, all of it was a lesson. The wolf was showing the cub how to read the forest, how to understand the unspoken language of the wild. It was early in the morning when the cub first experienced the wolf's lesson in survival. The wolf had led it to a small clearing where the scent of fresh deer tracks hung in the air. The cub's curiosity piqued, but it didn't move forward hastily. Instead, it paused, as the wolf had done. The old wolf stood still, its eyes narrowing as it studied the ground. The cub, mimicking the wolf's movements, bent down to inspect the tracks. It wasn't sure exactly what it was looking for, but instinct told it that this was an important moment. The wolf watched, its gaze calm but observant, waiting to see if the cub would understand the lesson. Slowly, cautiously, the cub began to take in the details. The size of the tracks, the way they were spaced, the fresh scent left behind. The wolf had taught it something invaluable, without ever having to say a word. After a long pause, the wolf gave a small nudge with its nose, signaling the cub to follow. Together, they began to move, the cub learning how to step lightly, how to stay quiet, how to be aware of every sound and movement around it. The cub's heart raced with the excitement of learning. It wasn't just about surviving anymore, it was about thriving, about becoming part of the wild in a way it had never known before. As the day wore on, the cub felt itself growing stronger. The wolf had led it through the forest, teaching it how to navigate the terrain, how to find food, and how to listen to the language of the forest. It had shown the cub how to remain patient, to wait for the right moment, and to trust its instincts. By midday, the wolf led the cub to a small stream, its waters glistening under the sun. The wolf paused, then lowered its head to the water, taking a long drink. The cub followed suit, its throat dry from the journey. As it drank, it noticed the difference in the water's clarity, the coolness that seemed to wash away the last of its weariness. It was a simple moment, yet profound, one that the cub would have missed if not for the wolf's guidance. The wolf didn't stop there. It continued to lead the cub, always patient, always vigilant. As the evening drew near, the cub felt a sense of pride it had never known before. The wild had once been a terrifying place, full of unknowns. But now, with the wolf's teachings, the cub was beginning to see the beauty in it, the rhythm of life and death, the delicate balance of all things. The wolf had shown it how to survive, yes, but it had also shown it how to live. By nightfall, the cub had taken its first steps toward becoming a true creature of the wild. It was no longer a helpless, injured cub. It was a survivor, a learner, and, perhaps, one day, a teacher in its own right. The dawn of the final day arrived quietly, with the first rays of sunlight creeping over the horizon and casting long shadows across the forest. The air was crisp, with the scent of pine and fresh earth filling the lungs. The cub, now standing tall and steady, looked out over the wild expanse that had once seemed so intimidating. It was no longer the fragile, trembling creature that had stumbled through the woods days ago. It was stronger now, physically, mentally, and emotionally. But the wild had a way of keeping creatures on edge. Even the strongest of animals had to face moments where they had to dig deeper, find reserves of strength they never knew they had. And today, the cub would face that test. The wolf, ever patient and observant, had been by the cub's side throughout the journey. It had shown the cub how to survive, how to thrive, and most importantly, how to trust. But now, the final lesson was upon them. The forest had grown eerily quiet, the usual rustle of leaves and chirp of birds muted in the early morning stillness. The wolf paused, its body tense and alert. It raised its nose to the air, sniffing. The cub, now accustomed to the wolf's subtle cues, watched closely, waiting for the signal. The wolf turned slowly, locking eyes with the cub. Without a sound, it began to move forward, its steps silent and deliberate. The cub followed instinctively, its heart racing as the tension in the air thickened. They were being watched. The cub's instincts were sharper now, no longer the uncertain animal it once was. It could sense the presence of something in the forest, something that wasn't quite right. The breeze had shifted, and the scent in the air was not the usual forest musk. It was the unmistakable smell of a predator, something large, something dangerous. The wolf's body tensed, and it turned to the cub, its eyes sharp and focused. The wolf gave a small but meaningful gesture, its head nodding in a subtle, protective way. It was clear what needed to be done now. This wasn't just about survival. This was about a test of courage, a test of everything the wolf had taught the cub. It was a moment that would define their bond. Without a word, the wolf crouched low to the ground, its body ready for action. The cub mimicked its movements, instinctively falling into a defensive stance. They had become a team, two animals, once from different worlds, now united by a shared understanding of the wilderness. The tension broke when a loud growl echoed from the nearby trees. A massive mountain lion, sleek and silent, emerged from the underbrush, its yellow eyes gleaming with hunger. The cub's heart skipped a beat. It had never faced a predator of this size before, but it wasn't afraid. Not anymore. The wolf did not hesitate. With a swift movement, it lunged forward, its teeth bared in a defensive snarl. The lion hissed, its powerful muscles coiling as it prepared to strike. The battle was fierce, an explosion of snarls, claws, and teeth. The cub watched, its body tense, unsure of what it should do. But then it remembered everything the wolf had shown it. The patience, the observation, the careful steps. The cub took a deep breath, its eyes focused on the lion's movements, watching for its opening. The wolf, though ancient, was agile. It moved with surprising speed, its sharp teeth finding their mark. But the lion wasn't backing down. The battle raged on, and the cub knew it had to act. It wasn't just a bystander anymore, it was part of this wild world. With a surge of courage, the cub charged forward, using all its strength. It wasn't as big or as powerful as the lion, but it had learned to use its agility. With a powerful swipe of its claws, the cub distracted the lion just long enough for the wolf to land a decisive blow. The lion, surprised by the cub's boldness, recoiled and fled into the woods. The clearing fell silent once more. The cub stood, panting heavily, its heart racing with adrenaline. It had faced its first real challenge, and it had emerged victorious, not alone, but with the wolf's guidance. The bond between them had deepened even further. The wolf had taught the cub everything it needed to know to survive, and the cub had proven it was ready to stand on its own, to face the wilderness with courage. The wolf approached the cub, its body relaxed, its eyes soft with approval. There were no words, no need for them. The lesson had been learned. Together, they stood in the clearing, watching as the morning sun bathed the forest in golden light. The cub wasn't the same animal that had first wandered into the wilderness. It had become a creature of the wild, capable of facing any challenge with strength, courage, and the knowledge that it wasn't alone. The bond between the old wolf and the grizzly cub was unspoken, but it was unbreakable. They had walked different paths to this point, but now their journey together had only just begun.